What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, going through the latest Detroit Lions news. And today, we are here with some massive breaking news that can lift all of our spirits. So let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here, man. And I am a little bit lost for words with what I just heard, man. So I was sitting there. We were live on Bleacher Report. We were doing our first offseason preview. Definitely feel free to go check that thing out, man. It's about 30 minutes long. And we just previewed like what this offseason is going to look like. And one of the biggest dominoes that I was going to talk about in that show was about the coaching staff, because to make a long story short here, essentially the Lions offseason preview looks like this. It's not going to be about a ton of the impending free agents, guys that are set to become unrestricted free agents this offseason, because we don't have a lot of our top production players in that spot. Josh Reynolds and Jonah kind of highlight that position, but then you also, it's really going to be about the extensions that the Lions are going to be set to give out. Guys that can now negotiate the first draft class, Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, two guys that definitely could kind of like reset the market. Ali McNeil is probably in line for a pretty big deal as well as others. And then also we took a look at the draft picks, where the Lions were at financially, and also went back to what essentially the Lions set out to do when Brad Holmes got here, which was we wanted to re-sign our guys, we wanted to build through the draft, and not necessarily through splash free agent signings or these huge, trades necessarily. We wanted to build through the draft and re-sign those pieces. And the way that the Lions are currently constructed, it's very promising, because when you just look at the impending free agents, you don't look at the list and step back and be like, oh, dang, all our best players are on there. You got some good players on there, but the best players are under contract, or it's about getting extensions at this point in time. And that's where the Lions are currently sitting, with the 7th most cap space. Now, they also have the least amount of players under contract next year, starting right now, according to Spotrac. But, again, a lot of our top players are under contract, and it's just about now getting extensions done. So that's awesome, right? We took a look at the draft picks. Lions have 4 picks in the top 100. They have an extra third-round pick. We went through maybe the top 5 early needs, so definitely go check that out. However, the big domino that I was going to sit here and discuss was the coaching staff, because to me, it's not about the free agents as much as it's going to be about extensions, some potential moves here, what are the top needs, as well as what happens with this coaching staff. And the reason it's such an important factor, as we all know, but if you don't, is because this, going back to when Dan Campbell arrived, it was all about the coaching and staff he assembled, man. It was like, yo, it's an all-star staff that Dan Campbell just put together here. I mean, this thing is loaded. And that's what it's been about. And obviously, Ben Johnson, he wasn't really like the guy in all of this when that took place. He was the guy that kind of worked his way up. He became the offensive coordinator, kind of through a weird little path there through Anthony Lynn, and kind of stepped in as a guy that we didn't really hear a ton about, but then we did a little bit. It was like, oh, that guy's going to be the offensive coordinator. And he has been incredible. And then you also have Aaron Glenn, that's been the DC since he's come here. First-time defense coordinator as a defensive backs coach. And that was a huge question. I think the Lions have one of the best coaching staffs in football. I think when you talk about those two guys individually, they are two of the best at their respective positions. I think Ben Johnson is the best offensive coordinator in football, hands down. Now, with that being said, I don't know every team as detailed as I know the Lions. So to be fair to other teams, let me throw the disclaimer. But from what I've seen, he's incredible. Also, you look at a guy like Aaron Glenn, I think he's improved, but you look at a guy like Aaron Glenn, I think he's incredible for the Lions, as well as our defensive coordinator. And the one thing that we were going to talk about was when you look at the coaching vacancies, and we were going to look at this, is right now it seems like Ben's going to get a job somewhere, because there's Seattle and Washington, and he was set to meet with both Monday and Tuesday, and that there was interest there. And it felt like for a longest like he's going to Washington. But one of those two teams he's going to land a spot. And then you looked at a guy like Aaron Glenn, and he was also set to meet with Washington on Tuesday. But there was not the same interest, reportedly, from Seattle on Aaron Glenn. So while that's still something to kind of keep an eye on as this rolls along, because I do think he's a real factor for that spot, and I think he's built to be a guy that has the personality to be a head coach. He's improved a lot here. So I can understand why, as just a culture builder, you would want that piece. Completely get it. And then obviously there's kind of the backs of the financials and all those things. What are they looking for that we don't know all of? And it feels like since Aaron Glenn's gotten here, he's wanted to kind of work his way to that position. I think he's done a great job as defensive coordinator. I thought schematically he was awesome in our last game, honestly. But with that, I feels like he wants to kind of get that spot. So that's still one of the dominoes that we're kind of waiting to have fall. And what's the next Lions, option? Is it Brian Duker, the defensive backs coach? Could he be the next guy that steps up as a Kelvin Shepard, which would seem like would make sense? Then you also have some of the assistant coaches like Antoine Randall L., who reportedly, interviewing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for their offensive coordinator position. So what then? Does Seth Ryan step in at receiver coach? Right? You have little questions, some questions like that, but it was really about those two dominoes. And while we're still waiting on Glenn, Ben Johnson was a massive domino, and it felt like for sure he was getting a job somewhere. And then today, we start to see some recent reports kind of come out. First off, Adam Schefter, 11 minutes ago, as of when I'm reading this, says this: Ben Johnson was not the head coaching lock that people thought, and his asking price spooked some teams, per sources. Okay, starting there, I definitely think if you're going to go hire an offense coordinator, I understand he hasn't been an offense coordinator as long as some of the other offense coordinators. They're looking for a head coach job, and I get that. But, like, to me, like I said, I think he's the best in the business. So if I was doing it, I would go get that guy. Now, the asking price, we heard the report at one point was like $15 million per year. But, again, we don't really know if that's official. And then I think they kind of, like, shot that down like that's not true. I'm sure there is an impact to how much for a guy is asking for. I'm sure that plays a factor in this. It also makes me think that, man, Sheila is paying these dudes. Like, she's taking care of them, because I think it was last year after the season was like, oh, is he going to go? And then he's like, I'm coming back. We're like, yes, Ben's coming back. And it was like, there's going to be increased pay here, but we didn't know the number, but we just like kind of heard like, okay, these guys are going to get taken care of. I haven't heard anything like that, but it would make sense that if his asking price is so high and teams like, I don't know about all that, that Sheila's like taking care of him and is like, look, just stay here. We got you. We got you. Hey, you took us to the NFC Championship. We're going to take care of this coaching staff. That's kind of what it feels like. Again, that's a complete guess. I have no idea if that's true or not, but he told Seattle, he told Washington, man, I'm going back to Detroit. And maybe he wasn't, right? There was also this a day ago that was posted on the Pat McAfee show saying, I'm not convinced yet that Ben Johnson is getting the Commander's job. People think Ben is going to Washington and Dan Quinn is going to Seattle. I will bet you at a minimum that one of those isn't right, and maybe both. So maybe there just wasn't the same interest. Maybe it was an asking price thing. I don't know what it is, but their loss. This dude's back in Detroit, and I'll tell you what, man, I think both these guys, Aaron Glenn and Ben, both have earned opportunities to be head coaches, but I do think as well when I look at this, I mean, these guys are looking for that next step. I do think as well what the Lions have right now, and people may think this is crazy, but what they have and what Sheila has instilled here is that they have consistency. They have consistency at quarterback. We're expecting Goff to get his attention. They have consistency personnel. They have consistency from the head coach. They know exactly what he wants out of these guys, and, man, he gives all the love and flowers that he can to these guys, understanding that, man, it's about the coaching staff he puts around him. It's not just about him, as well as from the top down leadership's perspective. Man, I mean, it just doesn't get better than that. Sheila is doing an excellent job. She has turned this thing around. She's backed her guys when things were bad, and it was 1-6, and in the past, after that 4-19-1 start, we would have fired guys. She backed them. So from the top down, the Lions, to me, actually have one of the most stable top-down organizations, and that's what it's about in the NFL. The Lions, crazy as it sounds, to me, they're one of the most stable and reliable organizations right now because of where Sheila has instilled everything, and it trickles down to, obviously, one of the best scouting departments in football. It's a reason, huge reason that personnel is here. Dan Campbell, who's been incredible. You know exactly what you're going to get out of the guy. And then the personnel. So the fact that Ben Johnson returning, and he's only 37 years old, right, so he'll probably have more opportunities. He absolutely will. But to me, I'm looking at this as like, man, maybe he's thinking this is unfinished business. I mean, we got more work to do. But at the same time, this is one of the biggest dominoes, if not the biggest domino of the offseason, is going to be about the coaching staff. And I think the biggest one just fell, and it fell in our direction. Ben Johnson is staying in Detroit for another season. So as rough as it may be as a Lions fan right now, and I'm still getting over it, and I don't know if I will get over it. I'm still struggling with it, but the draft is starting, so I'm immediately moving on. We're doing Senior Bowl stuff. Ben Johnson back in Detroit feels pretty good. It feels pretty good, man. So again, go feel free to check that out live. I reacted to it live because I saw it live. I was like, wait, what just happened? Did this thing really get announced? I was about to talk about the coaching staff. Ben Johnson's back. There's more dominoes to fall. But for now, the Lions just got a huge. Oh my God, I can't even. There's no way. I mean, anything I say would be underestimating how massive this is. Ben Johnson is absolutely incredible. Run game scheme, creativity, pass game scheme. Obviously, there's a lot of help around him as well, but, man, this dude has been incredible. This is huge. This is huge. This is how you run it back.
And the reason I say that is because as big as, the personnel is, and when we talk about that, and me and Brad would do a show, and he would say, maybe like, hey, next year, like we're built for next year, maybe we're ahead of schedule. I don't disagree with that on paper, but having these coordinators, I just assumed they would honestly both be gone, specifically Ben. So knowing that, it was like, man, we got to take advantage when they're here, because there's going to be turnover. We just saw what happened with Philly. Don't think that'll happen here. I think we have really nice assistants that can step in, but this is your opportunity. And the fact that he is now staying here, I have complete faith that now the Detroit Lions are on the right path to get back. And as Dan Campbell said in his presser, the reason that he brought up that the Detroit Lions, right, it wasn't going to be easy to get back here, right, and that this could be their only shot, and we heard that quote, is because of, like he said, it's not just about the players or the talent or the personnel. It's also about mentally the same hunger. But it's also, to me, Ben Johnson deciding to come back like he did this past season and saying, look, man, I don't know what his reasoning was, but maybe it was there is unfinished business. And that's what it felt like the first time. Maybe he's saying that again. And that kind of response from everybody involved is how you get back to where you were and you get that same buy-in because everybody has that same goal.